Hey, what's going on out there, YouTube family? This is Sammy Leg here representing TeamJVS, here to give you guys another movie review. I didn't get the opportunity of checking this out while I was at Toronto International Film Festival, but Netflix is allowing me to be able to cover it now, and I'm talking about All Quiet on the Western Front. Now, there were two different films that came before this, one in 1930 and then another one in 1979. This one is... man, I don't know how to really describe it. It's probably one of the best war films I probably have ever really seen. One of the most brutal and one of the most tragic. I think, honestly, I would equate this to, as far as like cinematic warfare, like maybe Full Metal Jacket mixed with a little bit of Deer Hunter. Because it's not just the brutality of the war and the circumstance, it's the human factor. What's happening with the disintegration of the human heart and the mindset, the psychological, everything is brutal. It's brutal from the ground up. Daniel Bruhl, he plays one of the key roles in this, but it's all about the young stars, and I'm talking about Felix Kammerer. He's amazing as Paul, because when you see Paul in there again, he's like 17 years old with his friends, and like, yeah, we want to go and get into the war. This is World War One, granted, and he quickly finds out, like, not only did he make a grave mistake, but he realized that there may be no getting out of this, whether physically or emotionally and mentally, because Paul deals with every single sector of what warfare is like, whether that is starvation, whether that is losing yourself emotionally, falling into despair, trauma, trauma as in, and this is one of the things I think is really vital to make sure you understand, like, their depiction of war, the way that they shot it, whether it's back shots, whether it's panned out shots, whether it's going through on a first person perspective of going through the trenches and trying to get out of the trenches and going into no man's land area, like, it just looks terrifying. And every step of the way, no matter what death is around him, no matter how scary it is, like, they go through all different elements. There was one moment, I think early on in the first act, where Paul's in a situation where he's next to somebody, the person starts to panic and legitimately is filling with terror. And the way they shot it is like, you don't know, what's going on. Above, like, it's a lot of shaking going on, and it's like, rightfully so. It probably, you don't know whether or not you should run or whether or not you should stay. Somebody just gave you orders, you need to stay in where you're at. And Paul's looking, like, the way they shot it, they looking at Paul's peripheral, like, Paul's looking around, looking at the person panicking, person runs out, and all of a sudden everything breaks out into, like, that tension, and the way they shot it, and the way this act. On top of that, the acting is amazing. The acting is so good. Like, I'm like they are going for it. And it's crazy to me. The only negative that I would say is, it's not even necessarily negative, is the movie is about 2 hours and 30 minutes long, roughly. It feels like a little bit longer. If they would have taken this and maybe spaced it out into 2 parts and kind of like make a little mini series of it and put it on Netflix in that way, I think it would have weighted it a little bit better. It would have padded, because watching it all the way through is a lot. It's a lot to be able to intake, as well as to be able to just get through and navigate, because every second, like, there's something going on. Whether it's a small little thing, you see something in the mud, you see somebody dead that, Paul may have had an interaction with, or like Paul having a moment where he's compromised in some way, shape, or form, and like a little piece of him starts to get, ripped away all over again. Like, this was directed really well. I think Edward Berger directed this, and I mean, some of the war shots, man. And it's crazy because, I looked at 1917, I thought that was amazing. And yes, 1917 had this long drawn out shot, and it was really directed well, but some of the war scenes in this, like, on top of like how well is, the camera work is, it looks near perfect. Like, this looks amazing. Like, it looks like so beautiful. There's shots where in the wintertime, like you see the snow kind of falling and like you can see it. It's not like blurry, like it's just falling. There's moments in the trench where, you know, the guys are dealing with, it's so dark and bleak, but you can still see the whites of people's eyes. You can still see like the blood and the despair on the people's face. Like it's a perfect amalgam of great acting, great directing, great cinematography, and just this feeling, the way that the story goes of not just despair, but it's kind of like how did we get here? And I think honestly, in hindsight, looking at it, like at the end of the movie, I was kind of like, man, this is, jeez. But in thinking over it, if you look at it from the beginning, going all the way to the end, they answer that question. Like in small little bits, like you get everybody's story. In so much shape or form, you get like, how did this person get here? Why is this happening? How is this escalating? Why is this not stopping? You know, kind of thing, down to even like the credits and showing that by the end of this war, irregardless of how the movie ends, and I'm not sure how the other two movies end, but with this one specifically, they state that over 17 million by the end of the first World War I died. But in the endeavor, I think just after a certain point when stuff stopped, I think close to, hopefully I don't get this number wrong, I think 3 million died. And that's insane to me. Again, this is like, you know, Germany going against France, and on top of everything that else is going on, like it was just this moment and how they captured it. Dude, this is one of the best war movies I think I've ever seen. Easily. And it's tragic. It's harsh. It's brutal. I think there's one moment that I kind of was like, the way there's an action that happens in the third act that I was kind of like, that didn't have to happen. That feels like, it not just felt far-fetched, but it was like it felt like it was just added in just to stick the knife in a little bit further versus like organically something. I think they could have handled it differently. I think it could have been like a situation where it's like, oh, okay. Then all of a sudden something happens versus a person makes an action, and then I think that and how long it is are the only detractors I have with it. This is easy, a 9.5 out of 10. This is one of the best war movies I've ever seen. So if you get a chance to check it out on Netflix, I'm talking about All Quiet on the Western Front. You do not want to miss this. Okay, guys? Talk to you later. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell button. Peace.